If you're looking for a new way to support the podcast, check out Dubby.gg, an energy supplement company trying to make a difference. There, you can use code SIDEMISSION for 10% off your order. Thank you to Dubby for sponsoring this episode, and we hope you enjoy.
Welcome into the newest episode of Side Mission. I, like always, am your host, Rusty Ellis, joined by just one of the boys, Kyle Lynch, and we have got a Halloween special episode for you today. Talking about a pair of survival horror games that have come out within the last month or so. Excited to talk about these games, Kyle, because I think they're both very, very good games. They're not perfect games, I don't think, but I think that Cronos, The New Dawn, and Silent Hill F do a lot of really, really good things in terms of horror games. And it's built on a trend that we've seen the last couple of years. You know, we saw the Dead Space remake, the Resident Evil remake a couple years ago. Silent Hill 2's remake last year was really good as well. But these are different because they're not remakes, they're brand new games. And we'll start with, you said you wanted to start with Silent Hill. And I think that there's a lot of things that we can say between these two games that both of them do really well. The first thing that really sticks out about this game, the atmosphere. The atmosphere and the feel of this game. This is what horror is. Chronos does the same thing as well in different ways. But I feel like from building tension and building a setting that really just, you feel like every turn around a corner could be the last move that you make. I feel like this game nails that feeling.
Oh, yeah. Dude, horror games are some of my favorites. And one thing that I have to praise Silent Hill for is they never let up on that, like you said, every corner has a threat. You're never safe, essentially. And I think the beginning of the game also really conveys that when the disease or whatever it is starts coming in and just kills people off immediately. That shit was brutal, too. That intro scene was brutal. I think that this game looks good. I don't know if I'd necessarily say it looks like a PS5 game, but it doesn't look bad at all. It looks damn good. The horror aspect is something that I think it works well with the formula that they've done so far. However, this game, I don't know, it feels a lot more action horror than survival horror because of how constantly you seem to get in combat, which, is one thing that I think is why they added the stealth bar, or the stamina bar, because there's a lot more enemies, you're obviously going to be fighting a lot more. They wanted to, I guess, put a little bit of a buffer by adding breakable weapons and a stamina bar. But yeah, I think that the horror is if you're looking for, I don't know, if you're looking for the classic Silent Hill horror, it feels a lot different. It feels a lot more fast paced, I think.
I think that a good way to say this feels almost like Silent Hill horror, but modernized. And I think that a lot could have been said that way about Silent Hill 2 when it was remade last year. I think that a lot of those same things could have been said because it felt a lot like classic Silent Hill, but just brought to, modern gamers. This, on the other end, feels like they said, okay, now that we've done that and gamers have had a taste of Silent Hill that maybe didn't experience it back in the day, now let's do something that's a little bit different. And I do commend them on trying to do some things different because at the end of the day, when you're a franchise like Silent Hill that has a pretty sizable fan base and is one of the biggest names in survival horror gaming today, it can be very risky when you try new things. Now, that doesn't mean that you just get full credit for trying something because it also has to work. And the breakable weapons, the stamina bar, does it work? I don't personally think so. I don't think that's necessarily what I associate with Silent Hill. I think they would have been better off going back to just guns. Now, I understand in theory why that change was made because the protagonist you play as is a young teenage girl. So naturally, I don't think she's going to be very proficient with firearms. So I kind of understand, okay, she would be swinging whatever she can get her hands on. But at the same time, gameplay wise, I do feel like that does hurt this game a little bit. Now, again, it's a survival horror game, and the biggest thing it nails is the atmosphere. That's the biggest thing, the fog, the creepy enemies, the enemies. Like I said this, and I think we talked about this, Kyle. One thing I love about this game is that this is not the kind of game where the sudden jump scares are the loudest things that happen on screen, or that it's something that is out of nowhere in your face. This is the kind of horror that the biggest jump scares sometimes are just enemies slowly walking around a corner that you're approaching. They might still be like 8, 9, 10 feet away from you, and they might not be aggro to you yet. But it's the fact that you're walking up on that corner, on that doorway, and you just know in the back of your head that something is coming. And when it slowly walks out, it still just scares the crap out of you. It still has that effect where it's just so tense. You're kind of on the edge of your seat, and that's what sets you over. I feel like this game nails that. I feel like the jump scares not having to be just so loud and in your face is something that a lot of horror games, and I think you can even extend this to the movie realm as well. It's something that people nowadays feel like jump scares have to be loud. They have to be right up in your face. They have to actually scare you from through shock factor almost. And I don't feel like this game does that. I feel like it takes kind of that tension that you're feeling throughout the game and it kind of toys with that a little bit. And instead of it being so bombastic, instead it's very quiet, it's very subtle, but it still works very well.
Yeah, I gotta say the fucking breakable weapons is probably my biggest complaint about this. The stamina bar I feel like I could get used to easily. It's something that we're used to in plenty of other games. Um, the breakable weapons, though, I really wish they wouldn't have done that. I wish maybe they would have gone for a different option, or I don't know, just something other than breakable weapons where your shit can get fucking soft locked in areas where there's lots of enemies, or even, unkillable enemies. I don't know, it was a design choice that I think I don't necessarily agree with, and it does make me not want to binge the game, unfortunately. Not to say that it's a bad game at all. I just think that was one of the biggest design choices that really separates it from classic Silent Hill games, is because your weapons break, you're going to be consistently needing to loot stuff, and in the other Silent Hill games, when you were exploring and looting, it was almost optional. I mean, it definitely helped for finding ammo, but you could always beat them to death. And in this game, you have to explore. You have to look for stuff, which is seemingly a reoccurring theme for both of these games, that I think it doesn't make me want to keep playing this. I don't know, I don't like being forced to explore. I like when exploring is optional. It's not like, hey, if you don't look for every single little thing and find every single thing, you're gonna die, because it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a very, very fair statement just because at the end of the day, that does interfere with the gameplay loop of, walking around this town or walking around in this room or in a building where you're trying to solve a puzzle. And it feels like almost half of your time is being taken up by looting. It feels like a lot of your time is taken up by opening shelves, opening drawers, opening cupboards. And the thing that's frustrating, and this is a trend I would really like for games to get away from, and I think you would agree with me here. I am beyond the point of opening all these cupboards and like half of them being empty. Because what is the point? Resources are scarce and supplies are in short demand. Okay, you don't think I know that? You think this is the first survival horror game I've played? Like, of course we know that. It's Cronos does absolutely have the same issue, and we'll get to Cronos here shortly. But I do feel like, especially in a game that is built primarily on melee weapons and breakable ones at that, it feels almost redundant that you have to search as often as you do, because realistically, like, a lot of the stuff you pick up, it feels like it doesn't really have that much of an impact. And I feel like selling it for points to get upgrades, or I really don't know what else it's used for. I feel like that's just about all it's used for. Outside of that, it's probably healing resources. But again, I feel like if I'm constantly looting and that's taking more of the the front and center than the actual horror is, I don't know. I could see somebody using the argument of, well, the horror is knowing that you're one hit away from death and you're looking for that one last thing you need. I get that, but if you say that for this, then you then have to say it for every other game that's ever done this that's been criticized for it, and I don't do that. So I think that I wish that what would have made this game better is a little bit more of the horror and a little bit less of the survival. Little bit more of that would have worked. Now, again, the game is bad by any means. I don't think either of us think this is a bad game. I think we'd both probably give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think that's a fair score. I don't know what you would give it. I would imagine it'd be similar.
I'd probably objectively actually give this game an 8 because
Okay.
really my complaints are not with the graphics, the story, they're not with really anything outside of how aggressive the combat feels and the breakable weapons. I don't even care that much about the stamina bar. I do think the stamina bar paired with the breakable weapon sucks. I feel like you should either go with one or the other. And I would choose stamina bar because I think that's, in my opinion, actually not a bad way if you want to have a little bit more aggressive combat. That's a good way to make it more challenging. I'd actually give this an 8. I think that this could be a step in the right direction for the franchise. It's just that it's a soft 8 because there are a lot of things that really hinder it from being just a fantastic horror game. Because in recent years we have so many to compare these games to. Just because they're not up against heavy hitters in the horror genre this year does not mean that in the last 5 years we have not had some of the greatest horror games we've seen yet.
And I do think that extends, because I think that does extend. That serves as a really, really good transition here, because I do think, especially in a time where this game and Cronos: The New Dawn came out so close to each other, Cronos: The New Dawn is a really damn good horror game. Really, really good. It has different issues, and we will get to those. But I mentioned that it does a lot of things well that Silent Hill F does well, and chief among them is you really feel like it is you versus everything, and you feel like you are alone. This game is really good at making you feel like you're alone, because throughout the entire game, you really don't get much in the way of help. You don't really get much in the way of, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the situation. Let's get you caught up. Like, no, you are dropped right in the middle of it. You're not told very much at all, and you feel very alone from the jump, and it makes every enemy encounter really feel that much more rewarding when you're able to get through it. And I think that is maybe the backbone of this game. It is very, very rewarding when you overcome a challenge, because, Kyle, as we have discussed, this is a hard game, and this might be one of the toughest survival horrors that's come out in the last several years.
Yeah, this game not having a difficulty setting was a choice. I think that it works a lot of times until it doesn't, and when it doesn't, it damn near breaks the fucking game. Because I, as well as Rusty, have played many survival horror games, and this one had me replaying parts like I was, like this was made by FromSoft, and I think they intend for you to die over and over to learn, but it's just that that's not what kind of game this is. This is a survival horror, survive, as in don't fucking die. But there's one of those like little tips at the bottom of one of the loading screens when you die, and it's like, dying is essential to seeing what's ahead, and that just didn't make sense, because I was like, well, the point of these games is surviving, and especially when you have little to no fucking ammo, and there's no way to really melee one of these enemies to death from full health. You're gonna die way before they will. This game went a little bit too fucking hard on the survival, to the point that they said you should just keep dying over and over till you learn it. That's a bit much.
I do think that is maybe the biggest negative with this game is it. You mentioned the idea of soft locking in Silent Hill F, and it is very possible, especially on some of the puzzles in Silent Hill F. Like you told me about the one you did, where if you pick the wrong symbol, and again, I know we're kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit, but you pick the wrong symbol in one of the puzzles, it spawns these enemies in. It's really easy to get soft locked there because the symbols also change in that puzzle to where you can't just it's not just trial and error and oh it's not this one, it's not this one, it's not oh it's this one, gotcha. It's not that. It's you pretty much have to solve the puzzle every single time. You're having to resolve it every single time, and if you screw up each time, you're going to get stuck there, and a lot of people are going to get frustrated and they're going to give up. Chronos, on the other hand, is less so about puzzles and more about can you make do with limited resources that are limited to the utmost degree. That you have to survive with the bare necessities. You miss a couple of shots, you might as well reload your save. You might as well reload the checkpoint because odds are you're probably not making it through to the end of this and you're just going to frustrate yourself more trying to run around and trying to loot ammo when there's probably not enough ammo in the room for you to survive. And I do think that is the biggest negative is if it's easy to soft lock yourself in Silent Hill F, that is almost part of the gameplay loop in Chronos. Is you will soft lock yourself multiple times and it will feel really impossible multiple times. I mean, I think about that section that got me that you were watching me, you were trying to help me with, and it felt like we explored everything to the utmost degree. It felt like I looked everywhere. I looted every box, every chest. I was, smashing boxes left and right, trying to get stuff. And it just felt like no matter what I did, I never had enough. And I do feel like they overtuned the difficulty a little bit. And I'm not saying difficulty options would have been the fix, but I think maybe lessening that difficulty curve early on would maybe allow for players to maybe enjoy this a little bit more, maybe get through a little bit more of it. Because I do also see a lot of people getting soft locked early on, getting frustrated and probably putting this game down. And it's a shame because the story is really good.
Yeah, dude, the story is when I'm not gonna spoil it because it's one that you don't really understand everything until the very end. When it all clicks, and it blew my fucking mind. I loved it. And it has me excited to see what Bloober Team does next, whatever they do, because the writing was great. It's just there are a couple of things like the difficulty, and we had the same issue in Silent Hill. There were way too many times where I was smashing boxes and there was nothing in them.
Yes.
You shouldn't do that. There's no point in doing that. It makes me not want to worry with the boxes. Like, it's put stuff in there one or two times, okay. But not a half of them, or not even a quarter of them. Like, damn, dude, there were a lot of times where you'd open cupboards or smash boxes and they're just empty. Now, the atmosphere, like you had talked about early on, it's incredible. This game got compared to Dead Space a lot. Because of how it looked early on, this game shares almost no similarities to Dead Space other than, some of the looks of the enemies that stick on the wall, and you get these grav boots that you can use to essentially float to other platforms or walk on the walls. Other than that, this game doesn't take place anywhere in space and has little to do with any of that. It's actually all on Earth, which I love because it's, I don't know, I'm trying to really say it without spoiling anything, but the way that they go about this, a lot of it is told in the notes and the travel logs. You can watch the cutscenes and you can get told the story, but if you listen to all the travel logs and stuff, and like I don't do this in every single game, but this is one of those because it was so confusing, I just kind of wanted to know what was going on. It makes a lot more sense at the end, and I think the payoff is worth it if you can make it to the end of the game. The biggest problem is making it to the end of the game is really tough, and I don't feel like this game was supposed to be that hard, or at least it wasn't conveyed to me as a consumer. Hey, this is going to be one of the hardest horror games you've played. I was expecting just a, run-of-the-mill survival horror.
You know what this game reminded me of, and I know it's going to sound like a negative, but I really don't think it is because while it's a game that we didn't really like when we played it, this game atmospherically reminded me a lot of Callisto. It reminded me a lot of Callisto
Yeah.
Protocol, which, again, I do want to point out of all the things that we had issues with in Callisto, the atmosphere was not one of them. That was not one of the issues in that game. That game set up a really, really interesting world and a really interesting story. It was just kind of held back more or less by the gameplay. The gameplay was slow, very, very just sluggish. This is very slow, but at the same time, it feels like as you become stronger, you can feel the gameplay quickening a little bit. You feel everything happening a little bit faster. You're charging your shots up faster. You're getting better at aiming and looking for weak spots on enemies. You can feel that. You can feel that growth. I do feel like this game made me think a little bit more of Callisto, and I feel like in terms of a foray into that survival horror genre, that more sci-fi, survival horror genre, I do feel like from Bloober Team, this is a really, really good attempt. Like it gives me hope that when they do another one, they will learn and they will be able to build one that's even better than this. Because as things stand, I do think Cronos is better than Silent Hill F. I would probably give this closer to an 8.5. And I know that may be low by some people's standards, but I think that that's a really, really good score. Where do you stand on scoring this game? What ultimately, because you mentioned that it is a game that has issues, but it's also a game that you learned to love a lot. Where do you come down on it?
I feel very good giving it an 8.5, a strong 8.5. I don't. Another one that I don't think it's.
9.
It's a borderline 9. I don't think it is a 9 because there are just quite a few issues that I think hold it back. However, I do want to say that this is probably my favorite horror game that I've played all year.
When you compare it over the last couple of years, where do you think it ranks? Because again, we played some good
Oh
ones.
man,
But I feel like, especially you get all the way through this, I feel like there is a lot of reward to this game, and I do feel like it would be up there with some of the best that we've played.
I would say probably right in between Dead Space and Resident Evil 4. Okay. Because Resident Evil 4, I loved Resident Evil 4. But I mean, Dead Space was probably one of the best remakes. Period. Like, I mean, it was so good. Dead Space was amazing, and I'm so sad that they're not doing the second game because that game was even better, and they should have done it, man. But just a one and done was so damn good. I loved the Dead Space remake so much that I platinumed it. And I platinumed Cronos.
That was the first time I'd ever played it. That was the first time I'd ever played it. And I
so
thought
good.
It was one of those that I think I said it on the episode when we recorded. I said that when it came to the Dead Space remake, I went in wondering, like, okay, I've heard that this is one of the scariest games of that era of gaming and that people had nightmares from it. I wonder if it's actually going to be that. And I remember thinking within the first few hours, yeah, it holds up to that. It's pretty scary. Like, it's one of the scariest games I've played. It might be the scariest game I've played. Like, Dead Space certainly holds up. And I do think that Cronos has that potential. I don't think that it's going to be a series that Bloober Team does. I think that they might, it might just be a one-off and they might try to, stay in the genre but tell a different story. But I'll repeat what I said. I think there's a lot of potential here. And I think Bloober Team should be proud of this game. I'll tell you what they should really be proud of. I don't know if you've looked it up. The way this game runs on the Switch 2, it's impressive.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is a good-looking game. This is a demanding game. Like, we mentioned that Silent Hill F might not necessarily look like a big PS5 game. This game does not have that issue. This game looks every bit of what current gen should look like right now. And with all the lighting effects, with the particle effects, with just the enemy design, I feel like every bit of that they nailed. And the fact that we played it on PS5, you go look at this on the Switch 2, it is not that big of a downgrade. It is a very impressive job they did getting that thing onto a Switch 2 cartridge and having it running. Like, could you imagine, Kyle, playing that thing handheld? I know you technically can because of the portal, I think
Yeah.
it can because of the portal technically, but imagine playing that on the Switch 2 and it's like taking that with you like in the car or something. Like that to me
Yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah, and honestly, I gotta say, you see a lot of games that come out, and optimization is one of the biggest things that gets looked at now because it's not it's not the early 2000s or 2010s where we were just like, oh, it's so and so's developer. We're used to them having bugs. And no, we don't really accept that anymore. So optimization's a big thing across all platforms, and seeing it run smoothly on the Switch is something that makes me consider double dipping on this game because I do like it a lot. And once you've played it through, it is a game that is meant to be replayed because, like, my last playthrough,
Yes.
I beat it in like under 5 hours. And I mean, that's kind of the thing with a lot of survival horror games are meant to be replayed. I could totally see buying this on the Switch just to play it through.
You want to know what I think these two games really accomplished? And it's going to sound like a slight, but it's really not. These two games got me really excited for what potentially Resident Evil Requiem could be. They got me excited for what that could be because that game, all the trailers look fantastic for it. And I loved Resident Evil 7, loved Resident Evil 8, Village. And I go back to it. Village is a game that I look back on and I wonder if we appreciated it enough because it came out in a year that, I mean, you remember back to 2021 when we did our game of the year. Rift Apart won. Returnal was up there as well because that was your game of the year. I feel like, and It Takes Two. I have that could be an entire episode on itself. Why I disagree with it getting game of the year, but whatever. Like it getting game of the year to me, I felt like Resident Evil Village was overshadowed a lot that year, and I really don't quite know why. Because to me, that is still one of the best games that came out that year. And if it had come out in 2020, it would have competed in 2020 as well, in my opinion. Like I think that it would have competed then. 2022, maybe not so much because there were a couple heavy hitters that year in the form of Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. But I don't know if we appreciated that game good enough. And these two games absolutely got me excited for what Resident Evil Requiem could be because that game looks like it could be almost the end game of the Resident Evil series. And I say that partially joking because of all the memes of, oh, like, you get to the end of the game and, oh, here's Chris Redfield. Here's all these characters. Here's Leon Kennedy, like all them coming out of the portals. We've seen the memes and all. But, like, I genuinely think that is a game that next year, if it's in the game of the year discussion, I'm not going to be surprised. And I don't know if you will be, but I won't be surprised at all.
No, not at all.
So that is going to wrap up this Halloween episode. It was fun to do this because I don't think we've done a Halloween specific episode on Side
I don't
Mission
think we
before.
have.
I think this might be a first. I think this is absolutely a first. So that's a lot of fun. Now, the next thing we need is for a Thanksgiving game to come. I'm kidding. But but this is fun. We might need to make this a thing every year where we play some survival horror games and we talk about them on Halloween because this was a lot of fun. So that is going to do it for this episode of Side Mission. You can follow us on Twitter at Side Mission Pod. You can check us out on Facebook as well at Side Mission Podcast. For just one of the boys, for Kyle, I'm Rusty. Thanks for listening.